Today, we're diving into one of the most chilling stories in the world of paranormal research. It's about Gaurav Tiwari, a man who literally made a living investigating the darkness. But what happens when, one day, that darkness decides to follow you home? This is the story of his final and most terrifying case. Our story both ends and, in a way, begins right here. On the morning of July 7th, one of India's most renowned paranormal investigators was found dead in his apartments. And, well, the circumstances were anything but simple. And that really is the central question, isn't it? Gaurav Tiwari was not a man who scared easily. He had seen things that would make most people run for the hills. So what on earth could have happened in his very last investigation that led to such a bizarre and tragic end? To really get the weight of this mystery, you first have to understand the man at the center of it. Gaurav Tiwari wasn't just some amateur ghost hunter. He was a serious pioneer in the field, especially in India. I mean, just look at this number. Over 6,000 investigations. Think about that. That's a staggering amount of experience. You'd think a guy like that had seen absolutely everything the paranormal world could possibly throw at him. Or so you'd think. And he wasn't just running around in the dark with a camera. He approached this stuff methodically. Back in 2009, he founded the Indian Paranormal Society with a clear mission to investigate these claims scientifically. They'd often rule out psychological issues or environmental factors before even thinking about the paranormal. Okay, so now let's get to the event that many people believe was the trigger for everything that happened next. We're going back to the night before his death, to his final case in a Delhi neighborhood called Janakpuri. So the case starts with a pretty standard call. A family is worried about their daughter, saying her behavior has become really bizarre. Now, his team was supposed to handle this one. Gaurav was actually sick and reportedly feeling pretty down, but for some reason, he insisted. He said he had to lead this investigation himself. And this is where it gets really unsettling. On the way to the apartment, he turns to a team member and says this. He tells him he feels a negative energy inside of him, just waiting for him to give up. I mean, can you imagine hearing that from your confident, experienced leader? It must have been chilling. So the team arrives, and they're already completely on edge after what Gaurav just said. But what they were about to walk into was way more intense than any of them could have prepared for. Before they even got inside the building, they could hear it. Piercing screams coming from the apartment so loud they could be heard all the way down on the street. People were literally looking out of their windows to see what was going on. And then this happened. The second Gaurav Tiwari stepped through the door, it all went completely silent. The screaming just stopped. And the girl, she just looked over at him and smiled. It was as if she'd been waiting for him. The team starts setting up their equipment, and that's when all hell breaks loose. We're not talking about one little glitch. Every single camera started flashing on its own. Their EMF meters, which are supposed to detect energy fields, were going absolutely haywire. Everything was malfunctioning at once. And then came the moment. Gaurav walks into the girl's room, and a voice speaks out. But according to the team, that voice didn't come from the girl. They say it came from somewhere right behind Gaurav, and it said, "You've arrived." At that exact same moment, another team member is back watching the live camera feeds, and they see it. On more than one camera, they see this figure that they later described as a satanic thing, just peering out from behind a wall. So the team rushes into the room, and what they see is just unbelievable. They find their leader, this veteran of 6,000 cases, just standing there completely still. He was frozen, paralyzed with fear. It was a sight they had never, ever seen. After a few moments that probably felt like a lifetime, Gaurav finally snapped out of his trance. But what he did next was a part of his usual routine. And it was a part that always made his team incredibly nervous. He pulled himself together, finished up the case, and as he was leaving, he did what he always did. He made an open invitation. He basically told whatever spirits were there to leave the family alone and to come with him instead. He'd done it thousands of times before. But what if this time something actually took him up on the offer? The drive home was quiet. When Gaurav finally got back around 1:30 in the morning, his wife was waiting up for him, obviously worried, and his response to her would be the last chilling thing she ever heard him say. He told her, "All the curses have returned."
He said that all he could see were black shadows, and they were laughing at him. He was directly connecting the torment he was feeling to the entities from his work.
And that brings us right back to where we started, to the morning right after that awful investigation, after those final, desperate words to his wife. His family heard a loud thud. They had to force the bathroom door open, and that's where they found him. The man who spent his life chasing shadows was gone. So, in the end, we're left with two completely different stories. The official police report concluded his death was a suicide. But his family, especially after hearing his last words, they believe something malevolent, something from that Janakpuri house, followed him home and was responsible for his death. And that's the question that still hangs over this entire case. Was this the tragic result of a dangerous job finally taking its psychological toll? Or, after inviting thousands of spirits to follow him over the years, did one finally accept? That's a question we might never have an answer to.